Welcome to Cyfarthfa Castle Museum and Art Gallery. My name is Christopher Parry and I work at Cyfarthfa Castle, and this is a video that's looking back at how the Crawshay family spent their Christmases in this house, Cyfarthfa Castle. And so we're going to be looking back at how they celebrated Christmas and what happened, and trying to get an idea of what went on at Christmas times in Cyfarthfa Castle, really. After we are finished in the castle, though, we're also going to take a close look at what the poorer members of the community in Merthyr did in the Victorian period, focusing on what they did in the workhouse. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this video looking at the upper classes Christmas and the lower classes Christmas, essentially. We're currently in the Yellow Gallery at Cyfarthfa Castle Museum and Art Gallery, and this is as good a place as any to start the story of the Crawshay's Christmas at Cyfarthfa. Now, this room would have looked totally different back in the Crawshay's time. It would have been filled with their furniture and carpet on the floor, different curtains, different furniture, everything. And it would have been the library room, but it would have been one of the many rooms that they relaxed in. Now, we have got a great little document that is a diary from one of the family members back in the 1860s, and she is Rose Harriet Crawshay, and her diaries are one of the best insights we have of what the general day-to-day kind of Christmas run-up would have been like in this home. And we know for a fact that on a yearly basis, for example, they planned a family play, and they started planning this play to be performed for the family members and the servants of Cyfarthfa Castle on Boxing Day. So they would start preparation and then work their way right through to the Boxing Day, where they would perform this play that they wrote, performed, designed the costume, built the set, even wrote invites. They literally went to town, and Rose herself was the main kind of protagonist in pushing this forward. She was one of the main characters in the play, and she was the main director, if you will, of all of the festivities around the play. And so in her diaries, a lot of the early part of December is taken up with building scenery, with writing a script, with doing the invites, with everything you might imagine. Now, we're not sure which room they would have performed this play in, but we do know they invited the servants here and also the family members and the people coming in, friends and family. But that was for Boxing Day, before we get to Boxing Day, Christmas. And we know for a fact from the diary as well that the first mince pies and plum puddings were served to the family on December the 2nd. We don't know if they had a Christmas tree. There was no mention really, but it's likely that they did on some level. But we do know that they made gifts for each other. Rose, for example, was spending a lot of time in the first weeks of December making a pocket for her mother, which is basically a little pouch for Victorian women, because they didn't necessarily have pockets. So they had a separate pocket which was knitted and embroidered in a unique fashion by her eldest daughter as a gift for her. So these early few weeks in December in Cyfarthfa Castle was all about preparation, getting ready, getting the play ready, getting the gifts ready, decorating the house and that type of thing. Now we're in the dining room at Cyfarthfa Castle Museum and Art Gallery, and this is where the main event for Christmas Day would have happened. This is where the Christmas meal would have taken place. Now there's a door over to my side there that would connect directly into what's known as the servants' corridor, and then that corridor would connect to the kitchen and cooking areas of Cyfarthfa Castle, and the food would be brought through into this room, where there was a large mahogany table with 21 mahogany chairs around it, and literally dinner would be served. And so you're talking, you would generally have beef dinner with plum pudding and things like that. Your typical Victorian Christmas dinner really was served in this room. But before they got to the dinner, they would spend a lot of hours in church in the morning. The connections to the church also highlight some other possible Christmas decorations that would have been incorporated into the castle and various other places in the town. Namely, the Cefn Coed Church and many other churches were given large floral crosses for Christmas. So the greenhouses and hothouses bred all manner of different exotic flowers, and they would create these astounding floral kind of designs. And Cefn Coed, as I say, in a few other places, were the recipients of these floral Christmas decorations, and Cyfarthfa Castle themselves probably had their fair share of those floral decorations kicking around. So very much a different type of decoration that we have today. It would very much be flowers and evergreens and very natural decorations. The other thing that's made note of in the diary is how during the meal they would have the Cyfarthfa band playing on the terrace and playing different songs like Hallelujah and things like that. From a few different accounts we know that the band would perform for a personal performance for the Crawshay family, but then they would be lent out to other places around the borough to again perform Christmas themes and Christmas songs and Christmas carols all around the borough. And we also know from the diary that Rose was very displeased by something that her father did, which is force her and her sister into the photographic studio yet again. Now, for those of you not in the know, Robert Thompson Crawshay was obsessed with photography, and even Christmas Day he had it in his mind that he wanted to set a particular scene and have his daughters pose in a particular costume to take photos of them in all manner of different positions and things like that. And so they had to dress up in Swiss girl costumes, and then after Christmas dinner they were rushed off through the servants' corridor right away into the other side of the building where the photographic studio was, and then they were photographed in their Swiss girl costumes with other family members as well and other people who were around for lunch that day. We're in the forestry behind Cyfarthfa Castle now, and the reason we're here is because we know one of the staple activities the Crawshay family used to do and did endlessly at Christmas time was hunting. Now, when you're walking around Cyfarthfa Park nowadays, you might not realise how much of a game park it was really. It was gigantic, and there was thousands of different wild animals occupying this space, and they were hunted regularly by the Crawshays and their friends and family and all that type of thing. So they even had gamekeepers employed to regularly stock and upkeep all the wildlife in the park. At Christmas though, we know, for example, on the 23rd of December in 1868, they would invite lots of people around, hand out guns, and then go around the park to hunt to their heart's content, really. We've even got original game cards that are printed with Cyfarthfa Castle's name and a list of all the different wild animals that you could hunt within the boundaries of Cyfarthfa Park back when the Crawshays lived here. Now, one of the really gruesome statistics is on December the 23rd, we know from Rose's diary that they killed over 800 living things in this park just on that one day alone. Now, that entirely gruesome statistic shows and highlights one thing, is just the abundance of wildlife that was here and that was hunted by the Crawshays and their family and friends, like I say. Now, one of the astounding things that the Crawshay family did at Christmas time on a yearly basis happened outdoors in the parkland as well, and it all revolves around the bodies of water that are around the park. Now, at the top end of the park there was a large body of water called the Bryn Owen Pond, or the Cyfarthfa Pond as it was also known. But that, on a yearly basis, depending on the weather obviously, would freeze over, and whenever it froze over, Mr. Crawshay, Robert Thompson Crawshay, would basically open the gates of the park and allow anyone in to ice skate. Now, ice skating in the Victorian period was insanely popular. It was seen as a sport and as a way of getting fitness and vitality back into life, and so the Crawshays actively promoted people coming, ice skating and getting their daily exercise while skating on the Cyfarthfa Pond or the Bryn Owen Pond. And again, the ponds I'm next to here now, the smaller balanced ponds, these would freeze over in certain climates and certain conditions, and they would also be used. But certainly ice skating in the park was a yearly event whenever the weather was befitting. We're in the Red Room at the moment at Cyfarthfa Castle, and this was one of the drawing rooms, but we know for a fact that this was the main place that they spent a lot of the hours over Christmas, because a lot of the entries in Rose's diary over a few years are all about playing different card games, and this was the room that happened, because they had large card tables, white card tables with gold inlay, that they play all manner of different Victorian card games. So this was the place where all the fireside amusements and all the games would have been happening over Christmas. Now, we're in the office at Cyfarthfa Castle, but this was also at one point known as the gun room, because they would store guns in here as well at different points, and so this is where they would come and bring their guns after the hunting that we talked about happened within the parklands, really. As Christmas Day came and went, we have got a diary entry for Rose to tell us about how she enjoyed Christmas Day, or rather didn't enjoy Christmas Day. Her diary entry for Christmas simply stated that it was Christmas Day, but not a very merry one, essentially. But there was more merriment to come for Rose and her siblings, because they got their chance to unveil to everyone the play they had been working on tirelessly since the end of November and early December. And again, it's totally totally unknown where in the building they would perform this. More than likely one of the large rooms, possibly the entrance hall. We're not entirely sure. But they really did genuinely, on all accounts, go to town. Building sets, designing everything. Themselves as well, the children kind of took this on their own backs to a certain degree, which is an amazing thing. Most of their years, as far as we can tell, were very similar in terms of they would religiously go to church most of the morning on Christmas Day, have beef and plum pudding for lunch. They would always have a big scale hunt. They always seemed to put on a play and organise it for the staff and for each other, and they seemed to really enjoy that and get into that massively. That is how Cyfarthfa Castle kind of marked the festive time of the year. But what else was happening in other parts of the town? Namely the more poorer parts of the town, people in the workhouse and people less well off as the Crawshays. How did they celebrate Christmas and how did they see the festive period? And for that we're going to go over to my colleague Ben Price to tell you more.
So you found out about Christmas at the castle, but down here in Merthyr, Christmas was also a time for celebration. But it was also a time for charity as well. Throughout the Christmas period, the townspeople would gather together and think of ideas and think of ways of how they could give Christmas to the poor people of Merthyr Tydfil. Throughout the festive period, Merthyr Tydfil would be a scene of Christmas celebrations. The high street would be decorated, shop windows would be full of Christmas produce, and a Christmas fair would be annually held at the market hall. Butchers, brewers and bakers would provide a huge range of produce to give the poor of Merthyr Tydfil a Christmas feast. On Christmas Day, huge numbers of men, women and children would make their way into Merthyr. The churches, the chapels and the schoolrooms would put on Christmas breakfasts, dinner and tea. At the Wesleyan schoolroom, 150 children were provided with a Christmas breakfast. At the Abermall High School, 500 children were treated to a Christmas breakfast. An annual Christmas event became the Christmas dinner here at St David's schoolrooms on the site of Merthyr Library now, where up to 3,000 people would gather for a Christmas dinner. Over 2,300 pounds of beef were provided by the butchers of Merthyr Tydfil. That's over 1,000 kilograms. 60 plum puddings were baked of up to £20 per pudding. This would become an annual event here in Merthyr Tydfil. The Union Workhouse was built in 1853 to house upwards of 500 of Merthyr's paupers. The workhouse was designed to look and feel like a prison, and life for the inmates here at the workhouse was terribly hard. The inmates would spend their time breaking rocks, picking oakum, that's untying old rope with their fingertips. Food rations for the inmates of the workhouse was less than the inmates in prisons were given. They would be provided with mornings of gruel, that's oatmeal in water, and then throughout the week meals of cheese and bread, cooked meats and soup. But Christmas was the one time of year where life changed for the inmates of the workhouse. It was a cause for celebration, and it was the one time of year where they would eat the same meals as the Crawshays. Inmates of the workhouse would put on impromptu Christmas concerts for the Guardians. But throughout Merthyr as a whole, there were Eisteddfod concerts happening all around the town. So much so that people had a huge choice of the events that they wanted to attend. The children of the workhouse were given gifts of toy dolls, picture books, sweets, apples, tea, biscuits, cakes, Christmas cards and other gifts, all from Santa Claus. Like at St David's, the Christmas dinner here at the workhouse always had charity at its heart. In 1897, the Merthyr Times records, "The angel of charity has been abroad and touched the hearts of many, and sent them forth to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, and to cheer the hearts of the desolate." Throughout the 19th century, Christmas here in Merthyr was a typical Victorian Christmas. It was a time for friends, for family and for charity. It was the one time a year where the poorest in Merthyr would eat the same as the richest. We hope you've all enjoyed finding out about past Christmases here in Merthyr Tydfil. Nadolig llawen from all of us at Cyfarthfa Castle.